Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Indie Creative Comics Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Angel, with John Pepe.
How's it going, Angel?
Woo, it is going, brother. Another Monday, another week. I can't believe it's November.
Yeah, I know.
It's November.
I know.
Like 3 weeks from now, we'll be at Thanksgiving.
Yep.
A couple weeks from that is freaking Christmas and New Year's, and then that's it. We're into 2026. We're into the what is it? What's a quarter of a not a quarter of a century? It's 250th anniversary.
It'll be our bicentennial and a half,
or quarter of a millennium.
Quarter of
a quarter of a millennium, right? Isn't it a millennium, 1,000 years?
Yep.
Something like that. So yeah, it's right around the corner, isn't it?
Yeah, I hope we'll make it.
Yeah, it's just going by so quick, but it's all good. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Indie Comics Podcast. This is Indie Review Week. This is where John and I pick up some books. There weren't a lot of picks this week.
It was a fifth shipping week, so every
that's right.
Couple 3 months, 4 months or so, there's a fifth week. At least as far as the shipping schedule, because new release day is Wednesday, right, for comics. Right. And so usually it used to be almost all the publishers would sort of lay off on a fifth week. Now it's really just DC that reserves like that for annuals or specials. So if you are into comic news, what's going on in the comic world. You've probably heard about the Absolute Batman annual that came out. One of the most brutal comics I think I've read all year.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, it's pretty intense, that one. I don't know if you've read it, but
I haven't. I dropped it just because now I'm going to read it in trade.
Gotcha.
I really, really liked it, but because we're reading so much stuff, I hate having to go back and remember what I read.
I thought you would have picked up the annual because it is the main story is written and illustrated by Daniel Warren Johnson, fresh off of his Transformers run. And
I didn't even know that. Completely ignoring it. Just keeping it out of my purview.
Main story is by him, and it's I don't want to go into it because it's not really what we're here to talk about, but so DC just did the annual a Superman special and finished out 2 miniseries, Batman and Robin Year One and Batman Long Halloween Last Halloween. So but a lot of the other publishers still kind of went almost full schedule, but as far as indie number ones this week, it was very light.
It was, and I completely forgot that it was a week 5, and it's so crazy that the last day of the month ended on a Wednesday.
Yeah,
which is
well, what's going to be interesting is Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve are both Wednesdays this year.
They are.
And again, in years past, I mean, I'm talking like 20, 25 years ago. If you remember, like DC would reserve like, if it was going to be a Christmas or a a New Year's, they really wouldn't. They would go light. I remember for New Year's though, they did an event, I think one year called New Year's Evil. So it was like 5 books that came out on New Year's Eve that all featured villains and stuff. So,
right.
Yeah. But so I don't know what the publishers have lined up. I haven't looked that far ahead yet for December.
Yeah, I have to look as well to see what they have lined up, because it'll be interesting to see what indie stuff comes out.
But you know what? I used to work for a woman who always, at her shop always would say Wednesday was like the best day of the week. It was like a little bit of Christmas every week. And so it is kind of fun to get to get comics on Christmas Eve.
It is. I'm looking forward to it. And I think there's stuff coming out this week that I'm looking forward to as well. But yeah, all right. So we have a couple of books for reviews. Not like it was completely dry, but it was just a little bit lighter this week. But before we get into it, just really quickly, we officially launched Project Shadow Breed on Kickstarter. I think we went live on November 1st, which was Saturday. And we're already at 45% of our goal, which is pretty freaking cool. So we want to thank the supporters who have already jumped on it, which is fantastic. But yeah, if you want to, you can go right over to projectshadowbreed.com, and that'll take you right over to the Kickstarter. We're really, really excited about this reboot. We've got a really good artist on it. Really cool. Alex has been working on it for quite some time. He's already on almost at the end of issue 3. So we're going 4 issues for this first story arc, and we're trying to get ahead of the game with everything. I'm done with the covers for 2. I think the covers for 3 are coming very soon. So yeah, we're trying to get really ahead of this game, and we were able to give you an advance sneak peek at the book. So just really quickly, just because I know you're not biased at all when it comes to reading books, what were your thoughts on getting a sneak peek at issue number 1?
Well, yeah, I do know a guy who gave me an advance preview of it.
Yep.
Also happens to be the letterer and publisher of the comic. It is you, Angel, if you did not know that. And written by Justin Barth. Bartz, right?
Bartz,
that right?
Yep.
Bartz, yep. And Alex, remind me of his last
name.
Moser, who, yeah, he is an incredible find. He is an incredible talent. Just lays out a page really nice, really, you're able to follow the story, moves your eye the way it should be, and written really well. So that's a little bit on the technical aspect, which is what I thought of as far as the writing, the art. The letters were great too, by the way. I could read every letter. And
with love.
And so so technically it is a really gorgeous looking comic, and I think that anybody who does contribute to this Kickstarter, when they get the physical comic in their hand, they're going to be blown away. I think they're really going to like it. And as far as the story goes, this is a reboot. This is a brand new beginning, retelling the story of Marek and his handler, his partner, right? Mm-hmm. And it's really cool. One of the things I liked, and we talked about this a little bit, the infamous Captain America movie from 1990, right? Mm-hmm. The late Albert Pune directed that, and he had a work print cut of how that movie should have played out. And the studio was like, we don't like this. There's not enough Captain America, and we want to just kind of do this. They took a story that was told non-linearly and then edited it so it was told chronologically, and the movie doesn't play as well. Yeah. And I was able, actually, I've been watching a lot of stuff about the director's cut. And I was actually, some guy put it up on YouTube like about a week ago, and I was going to send it to you, but they pulled it. They pulled it like after 8 days. So I did finally have a chance to see this. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because it is the Albert Pune's narrative technique is to just tell the story as it's unfolding in the present day, pretty much. And then getting flashbacks to Captain America's origin and his first and only mission, and the Red Skull's origin. And at first Captain America is just very, in shadows or quick glimpses. You don't get the full shot really until towards the end, as far as all that. And then and the final battle is played out with flashbacks of their initial battle. And it just makes for a much better storytelling experience for what that movie, compared to what that movie turned out to be. And that narrative technique Justin uses for this Project Shadowbreed reboot. Mm-hmm. So you are watching the events unfold. You're seeing a great action set piece happen with Marek and his handler partner. I'm blanking on the character's name, unfortunately. Leroy, thank you. On one of their missions, and then you get the flashbacks intercutting the action of what Project Shadowbreed is, who Marek is, how he came to be, and the way it's laid out narratively, it just really does give you a nice sense of being in Marek's head, being in this moment, and then these flashbacks are being triggered in a sense by what is happening present day. That's not necessarily the case, but it is, as far as what is on the page, right. But it's the feeling I got as a reader, which was a great way to put the reader in this character's head, because again, he's a wisecracking government serum infused werewolf.
Right.
And and so on that surface, yeah, the wisecracking part I get. I can get, you've noticed my beard at times, I can get a little feral, but that is still beyond the ken of normal experience, right?
Right.
So again, to use that narrative technique with the flashbacks to lay the story out, rather than just doing, in 1955 this happened, here's the action now, so it does also build the sense of mystery of the people behind Project Shadow Breed, and how they're trying to basically re-corral Merrick, and seeing how that all comes together towards the end of this first issue, and then again leaves you wanting more. So yeah, I want more. I can't wait to read more. I did go back and look at original Project Shadow Breed and just kind of compared. There is a little bit of a overlap. I felt.
Yep.
And I think that's great. And I think the two complement each other very well. But yeah, man, it was a really solid first issue. Again, Alex's art is just he's really knocking it out of the park. Not just on every page, but every panel, his expressions on characters are great. His sense of depth in a scene is really good. He composes these shots really well, and Justin's writing is solid, and it's a fun ride. It is a great John Wick style action story, but then there's also some really interesting character motivations and development just within that first issue alone. So
yeah, it's interesting because with we talked back and forth. And there's one thing, like when we read comics as a kid, I don't think there's any expectations when we're going into a book. You're just reading it, and as a kid or even a tween or a teenager, there isn't any sense of you're not reading it with any sense of reality. You're accepting it for what it is. And I think there's a really big difference because we've grown up, we've become adults, and now when we read things, if it sounds stupid or just so out there, it becomes annoying if there isn't any rationale attached to it. And I think what we try to do this time is try to create that sense where if a kid picked it up, that that reads a book just to read it and not compare it to any experience in his life, to not give it any rationale, that it would be a fun read. And what's better than werewolves and soldiers and stuff like that to play with in that sandbox. But at the same time, if you have an adult who's reading it, yes, werewolves don't exist, these things don't exist, but how do you ground it just enough where you can make it plausible and enjoyable, so that it's not like, oh, they're just writing about werewolves, that would never fucking happen, blah blah blah, this is a piece of crap, I'm not going to read this, kind of thing. Yeah, we'll read about a guy in tights and a cape and he can fly around and stuff like that because we're used to that. So I was trying to find that fine line, and for me, when I sat down with Justin and he was writing, I would always talk to him as if I was a new reader, if I didn't know what was in his head. Because as a writer, the story 5 issues, 10 issues down the line, and you may put something in issue number 1 that's going to pay off in issue number 5, but doesn't mean anything to anybody right now, kind of thing. Yeah. So it was all these little, I guess, gaps that sometimes I would be looking for as a reader, as an adult, because I can't, I'm not a child anymore. But I can also, see what's kind of fun and what's inherent in that childlike behavior. But then it would just be the why, what's the motivation behind this? And whatever we found a gap or a hole when things were done, I was like, all right, how do we fix that gap, so that, especially when you're trying to build a new world for somebody in a first issue, is how do you grasp them? Number one, introduce new characters, give background, but not make it boring. And I thought the storytelling of, going back and forth, like you were saying, in regards to flashbacks to the very start of Project Shadow Breed, to bringing it to where they were currently in their life, and then going back and forth, and then having that sort of like cliffhanger at the end with Agent Stonehenge, who is, you know, has his own motivations. I thought it was really a really good start to where he has the story going. And then just to fill in the gaps, and I think there's different types of readers too, right? You have ones that are looking at art, who just want to look at through the art and see the story that way. Then you have people who like to read, and then you like people that like back matter as well. So I know that you like to look at those end pages and see if there's any additional material. And we went back and said, you know what? I think it would be great if we add sort of like this. We didn't have it so much on the page, and in regards to Marek's struggle with being stuck in his mid-transformation of half man and half beast. We got the story of how it happened, but there wasn't a really huge reaction to when that happened. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if we had sort of like these journal entries of him describing what it felt like? And, you know, that's how he's able to kind of like maintain some of his sanity, so he doesn't go completely feral all the time, but he takes it out on the sheet rather than takes it out on people. But he still takes it out on people. So don't worry, there's enough gore in there in that respects. And I think doing stuff like that kind of flushed not only more of the story, but more of the characters' characteristics as well, which was really cool.
You know, it's interesting because I think in a lot of ways, you know, for the most part, I think what readers look for, I know what I look for, is something that is going to bring something new to the table, but also something that kind of gives you that sort of nostalgia vibes, right? You know, really quick, like we talked about Absolute Batman Annual, like the first issue of Absolute Batman, I thought was great because it read like Batman Year One. So you had that familiar feeling, and then they made the new things, the differences pop. And one of the cool things I really liked about Project Shadowbreed in both the incarnations now is, first of all, it's kind of funny that as you know, we could accept, we could buy into a government funded genetic super soldier thing actually happening, right? More than we can a werewolf, but it's not that far removed to make that leap, right? But also that, you know, on paper it sounds deadly serious as far as what you're going to experience as a reader. And one of the things that I kept coming back to was the buddy cop aspect of the book between Marek and Leroy, that their interaction, very, very reminiscent. And again, here's the nostalgia part of Lethal Weapon, right? You know, Mel Gibson and Danny Glover's rapport, or even better, I felt Tango and Cash. I felt there was a really good sort of like it kind of felt like that interplay. And so it does allow their dialogue to be a little loose and sarcastic between each other. And then you have like the people in the boardroom being, you know, this is very serious, this is what we have to do. And then like maybe there's like one guy and who's like, well, what are, you know, and that there's like that kind of funny beat, you know. So there's like a lot of cool stuff like that as far as that buddy cop aspect, which makes the action pieces really heightened, makes the seriousness of their situation that much more serious, being, you know, supported and not necessarily undercutting the drama, but being supported by the lightness of their rapport. They hate their situation that they're in, but they're making the best of it.
Right.
And I think that's a great way to approach that material, especially with the two characters you're going to be following.
Yeah, and I think that analogy of Lethal Weapon is spot on, because even when they were kind of going back and forth and it was funny for us, there were moments in that movie where Mel Gibson and Danny Glover were both in like this sort of like serious mode when the danger kicked in and stuff like that. So I think the lightheartedness of that movie of Mel Gibson kind of being crazy and doing stupid stuff allowed us to,
and suicidal.
Yeah, underlying suicidal. It was kind of funny, but then when you saw him get serious, or when you saw Danny Glover get serious, you realize that there's things at stake here, especially when you're messing with someone's family, or you're messing with your partner's family, and you know things get real, there was that tension. And I think that's what I believe when Justin and I were talking was what we were trying to accomplish in that, or what he was trying to accomplish in the writing, was sort of having this dialogue between, you know, Marek and Leroy, sort of having like that father-son relationship, or older sibling to younger sibling relationship, but also understanding the seriousness of what they're involved in. And it's only the first issue, but you know, coming in across this first arc after reading it, just understanding what's coming and their motivations, how it's gonna play out over the next couple of issues. It's been really fun, and I'm hoping that people can see that relationship, you know, build, get strained, hopefully come out stronger on the other end with everything that's going to happen to them, which is really cool. And then outside of that, just beating up bad guys and shooting them in the head. Because I think that was one of the things that I think Justin was really going for, because we love the 90s sort of extreme era. It's not going extreme with the muscles and stuff like that. But the dialogue can be cheesy like the 90s, which I liked. But the tempo and the pacing and sort of like that 90s, you know who the bad guy is. You don't have to worry about, you know, who's going to pop out of the shadows later on, who's going to turn on who. You clearly know who the bad guy is. Motivations may pop out here and there for different characters. But I think what we're going to do is just keep it really simple. And a story that you could just pick up, quick, easy read, and make it fun for everybody. So I'm hoping that's what people get out of it, in their respects.
You're almost there. I mean, you're almost halfway there, and that's only 2 days after this launch on the 1st. So that's fantastic. And I think people say, again, you know, if you back this, you are going to be really pleased with what you get, and you're going to want more. And if you're like me, I think the one big question, the big elephant in the room as far as the story, the thing that I really want to know is, being part werewolf, is Marek exceptionally good at basketball, or is that just another werewolf myth?
Yeah, probably another
perpetrated
werewolf
by
myth.
the movies.
But you know what? It's a very good question. I got a couple of questions myself. So I think what's going to happen is, as soon as we pass our halfway point and get really close to our goal, we got to get Justin on so that we can, you know, have him talk about his side of Project Shatterbreed, which would be really cool.
I think, you know, they do drive around in a van like the A-Team, but I think there's a nice room for a Teen Wolf van surfing riff.
I think there should be, absolutely. And it's crazy because when I saw the initial design of that first van, I was like, holy crap, I want that van so badly, because it really was so close to the A-Team van. I love that van. But yeah, guys, listen, we got about 40 days or so. We're really looking forward to getting this book into as many hands as possible. So yeah, projectshatterbreed.com, spread the word. Let anybody know who wants to support indie comics that they can go there. And support the Kickstarter, which would be absolutely fantastic. All right, cool. Moving on. So that's all we have for news-wise. So now it's time for reviews. All right, so I think we have a couple books this week. So I think, why don't you get started?
Yeah, I will. So spooky season is over, guys. Halloween was Friday. Again, followed up by another momentous day, the launch of Project Shatterbreed Reboot on Kickstarter. So again, if you haven't been paying attention to what we've just been talking about, go back, watch that again, and then go back this Kickstarter. And then, the marathon. The marathon was, so that's 3 big things in a row. The New York Marathon on Sunday. So one of the great things about spooky season is that the publishers definitely go a little, out of their way a little bit to release a lot of great Halloween themed and, horror themed comics. So we saw a lot of really good stuff. We reviewed a few of them. Of course, horror comics are definitely a year-round thing, but it's always nice when something special starts, especially the week of Halloween. So this Wednesday, a couple days before Halloween, I found it fitting for me personally because I started my spooky movie season watching of movies in October with Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow. I've always loved the classic story, and I do enjoy the Tim Burton movie. Does kind of go off the rails in the third act, but the atmosphere and the mood and the vibe of that movie is just so spot on. Just like these old Hammer horror movies, nods to the Universal movies, a lot of great classic actors, some from the Hammer movies, like Christopher Lee shows up. You get the Emperor and Ian McDermott in a non-Emperor role, and you even get Michael Goff, a Tim Burton regular. He was Alfred in the Batman movies, and so it's just a lot of fun. And it's always great to watch Shmesh Shrones get killed in a movie these days, knowing what we know about that actor. So anytime he gets to get killed, I'm there. And by the way, you got to see, if you haven't seen Beetlejuice 2, you got to see how they handle his character, because that is hilarious. Anyway, and then of course you have Johnny Depp and Christina Ricci and Christopher Walken as the Headless Horseman himself. Of course, the stunts are by Little Ray Park, right around his Phantom Menace era. So he's the actual Headless Horseman doing a lot of the fighting scenes. But then, of course, the big reveal is that Christopher Walken is he's the actor who does portray the Headless Horseman when he has his head. And so this last week, IDW Dark. And again, I still think that logo looks a lot better with the dark cutting the middle. But,
yeah, I do like that.
Yeah. But Return to Sleepy Hollow. So what this is 15 years after the Tim Burton movie, which took place in 1799. And so 15 years later, and the main characters will have to, like the title says, return to Sleepy Hollow. This is written by Casey Gilley, illustrated by Savannah Mayer, colored by Deirblah Kelly, lettered and designed by Valeria Lopez, and edited by Riley Farmer. And what's very interesting here, and I caught this with the last IDW Dark book that I reviewed, which actually had a black and white preview for this first issue in it, which is the Twilight Zone comic that they're doing. This has in the credits, it says inspired by the Paramount Pictures film. Just like the Twilight Zone said, inspired by the original TV series. And I noticed they had the Rod Serling character, but they didn't show his face, right? They had that narrator in the Twilight Zone, but they didn't show his face.
Right.
And so for all intents and purposes, this isn't licensed, and they definitely did not get any likeness rights, which I'm sure it's very hard to get both of those actors, the lead actors, Christina Ricci, Johnny Depp, to get their likeness rights. And so I think that's an interesting workaround to kind of tell a story in this world without having to, I don't think, shell out any dough to Paramount Pictures, exactly. Johnny Depp, Christina Ricci, or Tim Burton. So, and the writer of the movie, I'm blanking on the writer of the movie. But that being said, this really does capture the vibe of that movie. And I think it's really cool because it just does, I do have some problems with the movie, like I said earlier, but I do enjoy it as a whole. And one of the things I really loved was Johnny Depp's character. He is very skeptical of the supernatural, and he's very squeamish around blood. And both of those things he encounters in that movie. And one of the neat things that this does is 15 years later, he is, very much world renowned as a supernatural debunker. He 15 years later, he does not believe that what happened to him actually happened to him, and he chalks it up to mass hysteria and delusions. And and it's the reason behind that turn is tied into his relationship with Katrina Van Tassel, Christina Ricci's character, and he is Ichabod Crane. If you don't know, and if you don't know, they give you a really great recap. So if you're not familiar with the movie, if you're not familiar with the classic, the first American horror story, they do recap the movie for you, and the movie is close enough, in its bare bones skeleton to the novel, but obviously takes some very expanded liberties. But so it does catch you up to speed with a really nice flashback sequence that explains the whole thing, that has gone before. And so at the end of that movie, and I don't have a problem spoiling a 26-year-old movie, but basically Ichabod Crane, Katrina Van Tassel, and this young orphan lad whose father was killed by the Headless Horseman, they save the day, they solve the crime, there is supernatural involved, they go to live in New York together. Turns out that didn't last long. Within 5 years, Katrina felt the call to go back to Sleepy Hollow, not only with her familial connections and what she feels is her responsibility to the town that she was born in, but also with the spirit voices that she hears. But there's another reason that you find out is that she has a daughter, and it is clearly Ichabod's daughter, and the daughter has the same connection to the spirit world that her mother does, but even more intense. And so one of the great things that you realize is it's not just his stubbornness to say that the supernatural doesn't exist, even though he experienced it. It is a whole rejection of Katrina, and because she left him, and he doesn't know about the kid. But the idea that didn't work out has caused him to revert back to the mindset he was 15 years ago. And I think that's really great character work, to kind of do that, so therefore you're resetting. So you have that, again, you have that same thing that when Ichabod returns to Sleepy Hollow, just like the first time he went, he is very skeptical of everybody being like, it's the woods again and the tree. Right. And he's like,
it's sort of like a Groundhog Day.
Yeah, and he's like, the woods are a commonplace for people to dump bodies, especially if there's a mythology about it. There's nothing weird going on here. And basically, over the last 5 years in Sleepy Hollow, murders have been happening again, and bodies are being found by the tree from the first movie. And Katrina now she's basically the mortician. She runs the funeral home, but she's also a forensic investigator before forensic investigation was a thing. And she's always at the crime scene trying to solve what's going on. And the constable's very frustrated because he's like, that's my job. And she's like, someday there will be people like me doing this as your job, so you don't have to. And so it's a really fun little bit of suffragetness, right? Just that woman trailblazing, in a fictional world, but it does reflect, what we saw in the real world to a degree. So I really thought that was a neat little bit to her character, that she just doesn't live at her house and just, is sort of like overseeing everything. She's an active participant. She gets involved. And a letter arrives to Ichabod, as well as with his now, older young protege, Mazbeth, again, the kid from the first movie. He gets a letter basically saying, you got to come back. There's murders going on again. We need your help. And it's signed by Katrina. Of course, Katrina's like, I didn't write this letter. It's a very good forgery, but I didn't write this letter, but I'm going to pretend like I did. And she believes that it was her daughter that wrote the letter because her daughter had heard her talk about Ichabod in that sense of, this is a guy who helped us in the past. So really cool setup. Again,
is this a one shot?
No, this is a miniseries. So this will continue. Yeah. So there's a lot of really good setup. Again, I really can't rave about the art enough. This is basically Katrina and her daughter investigating the crime scene. If you can't make out the details, that's fine, because the mood is there.
Oh, and yeah, it looks really cool.
One of the colors. Cool things, a lot of colors, a lot of really good panel breaking, where things almost seem a little out of order, but your eye does read it the way it should be, but it gives you a good sense of that sort of mysteriousness and delirium of what's going on. And then of course this is Ichabod and Mazbeth back in New York, receiving the letter and whatnot. So some really, really great line work. It is very contemporary, but it is also very, very much a throwback. I love the heavily detailed lines. This is the flashback to the movie.
Nice.
So, very heavy detailed lines. It feels Victorian, it feels old, it feels classic, and it feels like the movie as best you can do. So kudos to them. Return to Sleepy Hollow, IDW Dark.
Nice.
Something I didn't know I wanted, but I'm enjoying it. So
cool. All right, check it out, guys. You heard it from here first. All right, so I have mine. Really, really, I liked the series when it first came out. It's gone through a couple of volumes. I think it's going to go on to its third volume with a couple of one shots. But Barbaric, and this one's called Barbaric: The Blackest Night. What's really, really, really cool about this, especially with Vault, it's funny because I complained in the beginning a while back because Vault decided to make all of their books $4.99. And this is right when books were at $3.99 and some were at $4.99, and it was sort of like making that shift. And Vault just said, you know what, we're going to be all in at $4.99. And I said, you son of a bitch, you guys have good stuff. I think I'm still going to have to follow you. And Barbaric was probably one of their first books that I really gravitated towards. And what's been really great about this particular run is that it still has the original creative team that's been doing it, which is great. So Barbaric The Blackest Night by Vault Comics. The creative team written by Michael Moretti, artist Gui Balba, colorist Fabi Marquez, and letters by Jim Campbell. This is a one-shot, so it's in the Barbaric world. So if you've not read Barbaric, you can get a gist of the story itself. You can follow along really well. You just wouldn't know the history on the characters. And basically, we're following three of the characters in the Barbaric world. Originally, Barbaric was based around this barbarian, Owen, who had a talking, bloodthirsty axe called Axe that would just get drunk every time it would kill and taste blood. Just this really hysterical back and forth between Owen, which I think is the greatest name for a barbarian, and his axe. So that first arc was really, really good. And basically, Owen was cursed to always help anyone who needed help with his axe. So he couldn't get rid of his axe or anything like that. And he could not turn away anyone who needed his help. That was part of his curse in that respects. But other than that, he could do whatever he wanted. He was just a foul-mouthed barbarian that just didn't have respect for anyone. I guess that's why he got cursed. So in this particular one shot, we're going to follow three females that Owen meets later on. You've got Sarah, you've got Khan, you've got Deadheart. Deadheart, who was banished to hell for quite some time. I think she actually died, ended up in hell, but then is brought back into our realm. Ka's just a fighter that they meet along the way, and Sarah's sort of like this magician. And Sarah has a sister who's quite evil named Doxin, who wants to control her sister, and she did for quite some time, and just made her do some really evil shit. But finally broke free with the help of Deadheart, Owen, and Ka, and I think there was another vampire dude that was in there. Broke the strings and ties from her. And basically what you have is a one-shot of her sister trying to get a hold of this talking flail that you see right here. And his name, guess what it is?
Flail?
Flail, yes, that makes sense. Now, Deadheart has a talking sword, but it's not called sword. I forgot what the name is, but it's just hilarious. It's just hilarious that there's talking weapons. Now, the thing with the talking weapons like Owen and Flail and stuff like that, the only person that could actually hear them are their owners. So when they're having a conversation and they're talking to their weapon, no one else can hear. But it's cool because we live in a world of magic. And so basically Sarah casts a spell on the other two girls because she can actually hear the flail talking as well. She casts a spell on the other girls so they could be able to hear the flail talking. And what I really liked about the writing on this is you can say, you know what, on your first try, you cast a spell and it works. But she was like, no, I had to cast like 3 different spells and it finally worked. She was like, one where it's like talk to animals, didn't work. talk to something didn't work, and then talk to dead finally worked, and they could hear Flail talking. But what's pretty cool is you got Sarah is being chased down by her sister, but her sister's looking for this flail that's been lost to the Black Knight. So the Black Knight doesn't have the flail, so he's not the Black Knight currently. And I think whoever possesses the flail can control the Black Knight, for what I understand, or has sort of like influence over him. So you have this whole story of these three women who come across the flail on their journey and then get intercepted by the sister. There's a whole thing that they rumble down. They're trying to keep the flail away from the person that could become the Black Knight, but then that doesn't happen and shit ensues and it gets crazy at the end. And there was a really good cliffhanger that's probably going to lead into the next story arc of Barbaric, because Owen will be back. So I dug it. Really, really cool. I mean, the art in here, I just love. The tones and the colors are just great. The fight scenes are awesome. I love the little. Let me see if I can put it this way. Where is he? Look, you see a little flail. There's like a little angry goblin and stuff like that. But just really, really cool. I think what's really great about one shots, if you do them right, is you don't have to read the back matter to understand what's going on in the story. So you get enough of it where they're not talking about things that you don't understand. They may mention people in passing, but there's a little bit of context that's thrown your way so that you understand where these people are in their relationship, in their respects. So yeah, this one was, what was this one? It was $6.99 as a one shot, but it's hefty. So you've got like 40 plus pages of a book in here. It's its own self-contained story, which is pretty cool, but leaves it so that we know that these characters at the very end are probably going to be seen down the line as well. So what's really cool about this one shot, if I read this not knowing anything about Barbaric, it actually would entice me to go back and read like the first 2 volumes of this, because really, really cool stuff. So if you are in the Barbaric world, definitely worth picking up. If you've not read this, definitely give it a go, especially if you like sort of like that Conan-esque kind of vibe. You'll get that along with a little bit of comedy. It's a really cool art on there.
Yeah, that's one of the things I do love about the Barbaric world is that, and you've always pointed it out, they don't speak in like that these and thous like we're used to. It is very contemporary language,
yes,
and very contemporary humor. But they're not throwing out modern references. You know, Owen's just very foul mouthed, and everybody talks to each other in a very contemporary way, which does heighten sort of the humor aspect of it. So again, it's, you know, just like we're talking about with Project Shadow Breed, you do have these very deadly serious situations. It is a barbarian world, but it is a lot of fun, and there's a lot of lightheartedness in the character interactions. I also love the format of how they do these, because most of the main series are just a series of about 3 or 4 issue stories that follow Owen's journey, which goes to some really ridiculous and crazy places, right?
Yes.
And so you have that main narrative, these main, you know, short miniseries with these one shots that kind of help fill out the world, fill out some of the backstory, and sort of set up, you know, bridging the miniseries prior to the one that's upcoming. So yeah, I've always loved the Barbaric series. I think you introduced it to me and recommended it back when it first came out, and it's really good. I hadn't picked this one up, but I'm definitely going to grab that.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, and I like the way they've made it into chunks, so it's almost like episodic, and you can pick up any volume and kind of not be lost, because each one of those volumes or that story arc is a self-contained story in an overall large story that they've got going on. So yeah, it's a really clever way that, you know, you can leave it for a while and come back to it, and it's fresh kind of thing. So yeah, definitely check it out. So you've got was it Return to Sleepy Hollow?
Return to Sleepy Hollow,
like IDW Dark, and then Barbaric Blackest Night. There were other ones I did pick up. What is it called? I did read it. It's one of these books where synthetics. So it wasn't bad at all. I think it was one of these things where you know how some things you can read and relate to and you just get, and there's some things that feel like it's geometry or calculus, and you're just like, what the hell am I reading? This sort of like felt that for me. It was a lot of really good information and context of what it was. But basically you have sort of like these at the very end, you have the ability to create these artificial limbs through technology. I think for me, what I was overwhelmed with is how many characters were introduced and how many different, not storylines, but how many different aspects to the story there were that are going to cross one another. But I was just like, I was overwhelmed with information, just put it that way. But the overall concept is sort of like these ability to create artificial limbs. Wait, why not be able to create artificial bodies that can become synthetics for people who can be transferred into them? I believe. I could be wrong. But yeah, so normally I'm just like Dark Horse is on spot with things, and this probably could have just been one of those books where it was literally over my head kind of thing, because it opened up in a like sort of like what we call well, she said I'm probably gonna be wrong. I thought she said he was jacking off, but she told him to jack off or something like that, because he was like jacked into like this world where it was like a neural link kind of thing.
Yeah.
But then that didn't really have anything to do with what happened at the end. And then there's also like these dead zones on Earth that are poisonous that people can't go into. And yeah, it was a lot. Put it that way. I'll have to go back and read it again, because it's probably one of these things where all that stuff's going to come into play. It's a mini. It's 4 issues, and it's really, like I said, we've been doing this long enough where we know that first issue of brand new characters, brand new world, trying to introduce everything and get as much out. I think this probably would have benefited from being 40 pages rather than just the normal, 22 pages of a comic kind of thing. But yeah, I'll probably reread it again and see if I can walk away some more context. But if you're sort of like into that, what would it be equivalent to? Sort of like what's that cyberpunkish and freaking Free Jack kind of world where
Free Jack, Blade Runner.
Yeah, Blade Runner kind of stuff. This might be right up your alley. If you really love that stuff, you may be able to.
Who's writing that?
Michael Straczynski.
That's right.
Written before that?
Like everything. So J. Michael Straczynski is for the big. He's worked for both of the big two.
Yes.
Mainly, his biggest thing was the Spider-Man run from the early 2000s.
Yeah.
The 9/11 issue.
Small press stuff. We've read stuff from him as
We've
well.
Also done
right?
some. Because he was doing stuff. Part of that AWA, that Resistance universe.
That's where it was. Yes.
Okay. He's also responsible for Babylon 5.
Yeah.
And has been writing a lot again for Marvel, kind of revisiting some old concepts that he had done, like Age of Apocalypse. And, that's right. I did see that I forgot it in the moment, but yeah, I did see that it was his. And a lot of the times, his sci-fi stuff is very Philip K. Dick-esque hard sci-fi, very detailed, and very deep character work, as opposed to his superhero stuff, which is, again, he fits in both worlds very comfortably. Not to say that his superhero stuff doesn't have some of those hallmarks, but when he gets to play with an IP, it's sort of less heavy lifting he has to do in creating that world. So.
And this is one of these things where the writer knows what they're writing, like in this sci-fi world. Like, he's very descriptive, and the terminology you have to get used to as well. The terminologies for that world in regards to what it is that they're doing. So I think for me, it was probably just being in the right headspace when you read it, especially a book that's like, for me, I don't gravitate towards sci-fi so much. And when you get so in depth into something like this, like the way he writes, it's almost like you're reading an encyclopedia.
Yeah. A
That is
couple
it.
of my favorite works from him, like back in the Top Cow days, Midnight Nation, which is a
Mm-hmm.
great 12 issue
Mm-hmm.
miniseries with Gary Frank doing the art, basically a haunted road trip across America. And then Rising Stars, which is a really big hit. I think at the time that was coming out, a lot of people were like, "Oh, this is the modern day Watchmen," and it was good. It was really good. I really enjoyed it. But that's a heavy comparison to make. I could see why people would make it, but yeah, no, he's one of the best.
Nice. Yeah, that was pretty good. So if you like sort of like that sci-fi genre, it'll probably be right up your alley. So yeah, check it out. So there were some books there for you this week. All right, gang. That's all that we have for you this week. So if you like what you heard, please, please, please subscribe to the podcast. Tell your friends about us. We're here every Monday, just to give out 2 cents on what's coming out the week before. If you're a creator, want to be on the podcast, just head over to indiecreatorcomics.com. Find the podcast form tab. Fill it out. John and I would love to have you on to talk about you and or your projects that you have coming up. Last but not least, or actually before last but not least, yeah, definitely go over to projectshadowbreed.com. Check out our Kickstarter. Maybe you want to support. Tell your friends about it as well. We'd love to get your support on that. Thank you for supporting independent creators as well. Support your local comic book shops as well. Without them, we would not be able to do what we love to do every single week. John, where do you get your comics from?
Well, I get my comics at the Joker's Child in Fair Lawn, New Jersey. And yeah, all the ghosts and goblins have gone to bed. Halloween is over. We put away the Halloween stuff. Out comes the winter merchandise. So, it's getting cold out there, especially if you're on the East Coast. So why not get some comics, sit by the fire and read them like I do? If you don't like the comic, it's an easy way to just get rid of it. Just toss it in the fire. If you do like the comic, be careful of the fire. But also warm up with a nice fleece blanket that we have at the Joker's Child, or a really cool Miles Morales character sweater, or a Black Panther sweater. We got the warm winter clothes out now at the Joker's Child to go with these hot comics that we carry every week. Not only current stuff, but back issues, and pick up some toys and other merch while you're at it. And if you can't make it to the Joker's Child in Fair Lawn, New Jersey, please, please, please support your local comic shop. If you don't know where one is, instead of just wandering around blindly around town, asking people where the comics are and looking like a lunatic as they look at you like you're a lunatic, check out on Google, search your local comic shop, and patronize your local comic shop. Get those comics in your hands from people who love to sell you comics.
There you go, kiddies. All right. Until next time, read something indie and support creator owned.